So I finally finished the romance with River, and I wanted to put a video together about it. One thing I've got to say I like about the romances so far in this game, even though there are a lot less than I expected going into it, is that I think they do a really good job of making it feel as though you're getting to know someone. As a female V, you have the option to romance either Judy or River, and while I haven't finished the quest with Judy yet, I will say, from what I've seen so far with both characters, there is a heck of a lot of having been to hell and back with them. I like that element of the romances, and how it feels like you've actually had time to bond. Now, getting back specifically to the River romance, you have to get to a certain part in the game before you can access it. I found that I had to finish the initial main story quest with Pan Am, called Life During Wartime, before I got a call from Elizabeth Perales. The quest you'll get is called I Fought the Law, and after meeting with the Perales couple, you will be directed to contact River directly. River is a cop, and you both have an interest in figuring out who might have wanted to kill Mayor Ryan. The questline wasn't all that interesting to me, and at first I thought it was kind of lame. I mean, to be honest, I actually love detective shows, have been pretty obsessed with forensic files since I was probably about 10, and so I thought, man, this is gonna be awesome. And the first case is just kind of meh. Basically, the mayor dies from a spiked brain dance in some underground club, quite literally. You and River find out that his very own partner was in on the cover-up of the mayor's murder, and while River takes the matter to internal affairs, you go back to your client and let them know that likely someone was gunning for the mayor's job and had him killed. No choices you make during this questline affect the romance angle, so feel free to say whatever you want.
B, hey, I need your help.
After anywhere from a day to 3, you hear back from River and he asks for your help with a new case. This quest is called The Hunt. He asks to meet up and shows you a newscast, a cop dashboard cam of a man being pulled over, a body falling out of the car, and then the driver getting out and running. The anchor takes over and starts describing more about the case, how the man shot by the cops was a criminal they'd been looking for called Peter Pan, how he's now in a coma at the hospital. They tell you a bit about the boy who fell out of the car at the start of the encounter, how he was a 17-year-old that went missing about a month ago. They weren't able to save him, and autopsy reports stated that he had really high levels of hormones, anabolic steroids, and stimulants in his system. Police also found the DNA of 7 other missing boys in the car, hence the nickname Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. Already this case is a lot more interesting than the first one. And this got my detective hat on almost instantly as I tried to figure out what possible reason this guy could have for injecting these kids with hormones and the like. It gets more intense when River confesses his interest in the case, that his nephew Randy has gone missing as well. He fears that Peter Pan had something to do with it, and he can prove his suspicions by the fact that the kid found in the vehicle with Peter Pan was wearing Randy's shoes. To make matters worse, the precinct won't let him anywhere near the case, and the guy assigned to the case is a lazy good-for-nothing. River feels the need to take matters into his own hands and needs your help to do so. Since you can't interrogate the criminal because he's in a coma, River suggests the potential to view his dreams. It sounds a little weird, but he claims it's possible with an experimental procedure where they can record dreams and play them back as a brain dance. He brings you to the lab where they conduct the research, and you find out that you're basically breaking in while everyone is off for the day due to an audit. As you hunt for clues, you're caught by surprise when a Dr. Packard catches you in the act and asks what River is doing there, that he got kicked off the force. That bit was a little shocking, but you can continue to plead with her to go along with helping, that lives are at stake here. River will threaten her with some dirt he has on her, and she gets even more upset, saying that he only takes and never gives anything back. And this is where you'll get your first option to work towards a romance with River, by selecting Hasn't Let Me Down Yet. At this, Dr. Packard will admit that Peter Pan, otherwise known as Anthony Harris, isn't dreaming, that because his cerebral cortex was damaged, they're only getting bits and pieces of any kind of thought from him. Make sure when you get the option that you tell Dr. Packard, I want to see for myself. If you do not finish this quest, you cannot get the romance part with River. So since the technology is typically used for kids, River suggests using a favorite song or movie to help coax the dreams out. Dr. Packard is not convinced, but River asks if he could find something like that, something about his preferences, if she'd be willing to try. She doesn't really answer and asks him to leave, but River is not deterred. There's a funny dialogue as you leave the building with Johnny. When confronted, make sure to tell him that River's all right.
Could be this one sniffing around for something extra.
No, River's all right.
Yeah.
Can tell you got something to say, so say it.
Me? No. Just maybe this cop's flying straight in your pants.
Flying straight into your pants, eh? Probably. Back in the car with River, he explains that he wasn't fired so much as suspended, and that it happened because he made a fuss about the mayor's case being kicked under the rug. He then tells you that you're headed to see Randy's mom, who thinks her son just ran away from home. You can ask for more information about his sister and their relationship, but ultimately he says that one day you two can talk about it over a beer. This is another point to show interest by choosing, "Sign me up for that beer." He sounds pretty happy about it too, saying it'll be his pleasure.
It'd be my pleasure.
When you get to his sister Joss's place, River has the hard job of telling her that her son's been taken by a creep. She gets understandably upset, but ultimately allows you to go through his room to see if you might be able to find something to help you find him. The key item to find here is the laptop under his bed. River will comment that there was no way he'd have the money for tech like this. The computer is password protected though, and if you don't have a high intelligence score, you won't be able to brute force hack it. Instead, you'll have to figure out the password, which you can do easily by inspecting the record player in the other room. The album he's got loaded in is Liberium Arbitrium, and when you return to River, you can now tell him to punch the track title and get onto Randy's laptop. Here you'll find a bunch of sick emails from Harris to Randy, obviously grouping him for abduction. He apparently ran a website called Drugs Are Bad. Sorry, it's just making me think of the dude from South Park. Drugs are bad, okay? So the website has a hidden section you can find by clicking on the main picture called Tony's Shelter. It's some pretty creepy stuff as it describes how Tony thinks of himself as a farmer looking after his livestock. And that's making me reconsider all of those hormones and stimulants as well that were found in the first victim system. Something typically given to cattle to increase production, especially with dairy cows, and it's why I usually prefer to drink organic milk because I don't want any of that nasty synthetic RGBH in my system either. What's especially chilling is the line at the end where he says that it's time for you to decide. Do you want to remain a shadow of yourself or become the person you always dreamed of being? Ugh. More people should be skeptics like me, because if I read that crap, my red flags would be going off like crazy. But then again, these are kids with no experience of just how awful people can be. That's what makes it so messed up. You'll find that there is a file missing on the website, and looking through Randy's files will bring up the weird as all get out cartoon for you. It shows a creepy farmer with cows hooked up to some sort of injection system pumping crap into the cows' bodies. It looks like a skeleton with a milker attached to it, Sutters. It's pretty dark actually. I couldn't imagine that he actually had this cartoon listed on his website, if this is what he was planning to do. Still, we don't have any confirmation yet, just a strong suspicion. But through this website, he reached these kids and even mentions in an email to Randy that he used his admin privileges to find Randy's address and send him a video game. In the last emails, you find out that they were planning to meet. It's really disturbing how close to reality these emails are. I mean, this is the kind of crap that weirdo groomers actually do to kids on the internet. If you've got high enough intelligence, there's an option to trace the IP, but since my character is not that smart, I had to do it the hard way. I'm not sure if you can skip this next part with it or not. Either way, the cartoon is enough to go back to Dr. Packard with, so River sends it over to her and she says she'll get back to you in the morning. Since you guys have to wait until tomorrow anyway, he suggests that you grab a bite at his sister's place. He asks that you don't divulge too much information to her, and so I went along with his wishes, telling her we'd know more tomorrow. I also chose the option to say he's a hell of an investigator, as it just seems a heck of a lot more comforting than "no promises, lady." In what feels like a rather uncomfortable ask, River requests that V be able to sleep in Randy's trailer. It feels a bit in bad taste to me personally, but I guess he's just not wanting you to go far in case Dr. Packard gets back to you sooner rather than later. Joss is alright with it, and when River leaves to go to bed, you have a chance to ask her some more questions if you'd like to.
V, wake up.
After falling asleep, River wakes you up in the middle of the night saying that Packard sent him the brain dances that she retrieved from showing the weird cartoon to Harris. He is more than raring to go and asks you to check them out right away, even though you're still kind of sleepy. Upon loading up the BD, you're met with a scene of a young boy eating in a cafeteria with a rather cross adult. Apparently, young Anthony killed someone's pet turtle by injecting it with human growth hormone. The conversation gets incredibly negative as young Anthony chases after the teacher, yelling at him that he can't talk about his dad like that he was sick, weak, and he just wanted to help him. Wow, does this mean he killed his father too? I mean, this kid is just seeming pretty messed up in the head. And when he looks up, the teacher is now a cow with a hooded mask on it, as though he no longer sees him as a human being, but just livestock, just cattle. Well, this is fun, huh? So the next brain dance starts off with young Anthony petting a cow with the same sort of mask over its head. I actually went hunting for what a mask like this might be used for, but after doing an image search, using a good 30 different terms, trying to find something close to it, I couldn't. I honestly can't imagine what this odd hood would be used for. There is a mouth hole, like you could stick a tube in there and perhaps force feed the animal, but what would be the point of that? If anyone knows anything about this hood, and if it exists in the real world, I'd love to know more. It's just really weird, and I can't help but wonder if it's a real thing or just something creepy they made up for the game. I digress. So, as he's petting the cow, his father calls for him, and we get to see this strange image of his father, but the head is missing, so there's no way to tell what he even looks like. The man doesn't seem like the nicest of fathers, and smacks him around for forgetting to administer hormones to one of the cows. The boy runs off to fix the error, and then spends the rest of the vision watching cartoons in the office. The last brain dance gets even weirder, as you are now a more adult Anthony Harris, and when looking out of your office, you notice someone crawling off a table and trying to get away. He nonchalantly walks out to the main area of the barn, and we see a young man crawling on the floor trying to escape. Anthony calls the boy Mike and basically captures him again as the vision ends. If you make sure to scan everything in all of these brain dances, River should have everything he needs to figure out which farm Anthony is keeping the boys at. And in my game, this was the case, but if you didn't find all of the clues, you should still be able to choose which farm to go to. And the right one to choose is called Edgewood. You and River will rush to the farm and find the place completely littered with landmines and turrets. There is a way to deactivate the security system from inside the house, but I chose to remote deactivate the ones in front of the house so I could actually get inside. Once inside, you can check out Anthony's computer and find 4 different kids he'd been emailing. Underneath the desk, there is a button that will open a secret wall, and inside you can find another computer that you can shut down the generator with. This will disarm all of the landmines and turrets outside. On the desk, you can find a data shard about how to understand your teen, talking about how the teen starts to seek authority figures outside of the family. Then it mentions that in order to become an authority figure to teens, all you really need to do is have a unique style. It's pretty messed up. Even mentioning that one of the things you can do is to criticize the system and convince the teenager that you and only you understand them. Just, This guy is such a creep. Now that the security system is down, you can run across the yard and up a ladder to the left of the barn. You and River then jump down from the roof, and inside is an absolute horror show. There are boys lined up on gurneys, strapped down with harnesses that reminded me of the things you wear on those hanging roller coaster rides. They all have the same type of hooded masks on that the cow and Anthony's brain dances did, and there is a tube connecting them to a machine above. River asks you to shut the machine down so that he can get the tube off. River is just a complete mess as he calls in for backup. You run around like crazy, trying to save the other kids. One doesn't make it, but the others are still alive. It's just nuts. The whole scene, you're removing these creepy freaking tubes and then checking their pulse just to see if they're still alive. The idea that anyone could do this to kids and actually get something in return, I mean, what possible reason was there? I have heard a lot of cases about some really messed up serial killers, and yet in most cases, you can break down their logic. Something somewhere along the way had screwed them up. Sometimes it was their mother, but in this case, it was very obviously Anthony's father. It's just not clear exactly why this happened. Why was he even doing it? To be some kind of messed up farmer? It might have been nice to know more about the things that had happened when he was a child, but I guess the idea is that we don't really know why he did it. Just that he did it, and it was messed up. Sometimes that is the only answer you get with in the real world crimes too. As you finish checking on all of the other kids, River calls for your help in trying to remove the restraints from his nephew, Randy. They are on there really tightly, and it takes several tries to pry them off. As you finally get the metal restraints off, though, and take the hood off of Randy, you both see that he is just completely messed up and out of it, not responsive at all. At seeing his nephew like this, River is just beside himself. And what I think is some of the best character acting, posing, and response in this game, he steps back and brings his hands to his face. The horror is written all over it. The complete impotence to do anything for Randy, the fear now that he had exhausted everything he could do. It was just really powerful for me, and it made me really like River as a character. This is something someone would actually do in this situation. Sure, this is just a game, but could you imagine if this actually happened? Can you imagine your response? And what if it was your family? He leans back against the rail as though he is feeling weak in the knees and watches on as the scene fades out. As a trauma team AV takes off, River heads over to talk to you. He tells you it's not over, that he wants to kill Anthony Harris for all of the horror he brought upon these kids. I know most people would probably try to talk him out of it, but I thought this guy was pretty messed up, and after all, this is Night City, so why the hell not? He wouldn't take my help though, but I reminded him if he changed his mind, I'd totally be there. The trauma team dude asks if he wants to ride along with his nephew, and before he leaves, he thanks V for the help, and that's the end of the quest. And this is what I was talking about. The amount of bonding you'd gain going through something like this with someone else, well, it would be immense. It's one thing people don't talk a lot about, but people that have been through some shit together tend to stick together, or at least keep in touch. And while River and V haven't gotten to know all of the details about each other's lives through years of conversation, they sure have learned a lot about what type of people they both are to each other. I just really like how the entire series of quests leads up to this moment, that you were actually able to save his nephew, and that you grew so incredibly close along the way. River would likely remember you until he was an old man, whether you became intimate with each other or not. Since this was such a long quest line, I'm going to cut this video into 2 parts. The next part will cover the romance and wrap up any more thoughts I have on River as a character and a romance option. I won't keep you guys waiting too long though, it should be another day or 2 at most. So, by this point, how are you guys feeling about River? I have to say, I wasn't initially wild about the idea of him as a romance. He seemed almost kind of boring, especially with that first quest line. But by the time I had met his sister and checked out Randy's room, I was totally on board to help. I really liked that even though him and his sister had not been close, that he still cared so much about their well-being. I'll talk a lot more about this in the next video too, because it relates strongly to your date with River. How about the Peter Pan case? It was pretty dark, huh? I feel like I find myself saying that a lot about this game. It really takes no prisoners, but it's nice to see that even with all of the crap going on, you can still find some decent people here, and I think River is a really decent person. Keep an eye out for part 2 that has all of the good stuff with it. Let me know what you guys thought of this video. Did you like hearing the whole backstory, or would you rather I just focus directly on the romance? In this case, it felt like the backstory was heavily invested in the romance elements too, so it felt pertinent. It was also a really interesting quest, even if it was pretty messed up. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later.